All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call together this special meeting of the King George Board of Supervisors. And I'd like to first open the floor up to public comment. If there's anyone here for public comment, they can step right up. Sir, step right up and state your name and address before you start speaking, and you will have 3 minutes.
Hi. David Norford, 7430 Little Chatterton Lane here in King George. And I'm delighted to see you all here and that you all have scheduled this. As you know, I said last time I was curious, wondering whether or not you all would have the time and the political will to do this. So you're to be congratulated for that. But we'll see what comes out of this. I did some independent investigating with car dealers during the interim since I was here last time. And I spoke with 3 different car dealers. Actually, I spoke with 4 car dealers, one that was not helpful. But, and it seems that in the mid part of last year, used car prices started to rise. And I'm sure that's nothing new, that you know that. But they've tended to peak, and in late November, December, and they peaked for sure in January. The car dealers won't say it out loud, but they saw this as a wonderful opportunity, and they immediately started jacking up prices on their cars that they had in stock to a record approximately 40% higher than they had been earlier than last year. Hence, when because here in the county we take the excellent value and we tax them at the highest possible level. Everybody got quite a shock, and so it's roughly 40%. They were roughly 40% higher, and almost immediately in February they started to drop just a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. Right now they're about 20% higher than they were last year at this point in time overall. So I thought that was interesting that the Honda dealer, Chevrolet dealer, Cadillac dealer all saw this apparently, although they didn't say it out loud exactly, that they saw an opportunity to jack up those prices, and they did because the market would bear it. They won't say that they sold more cars at the higher price, and I don't know whether they did or didn't. The local dealer here in King George wouldn't comment one way or the other. I was just curious to see what they were doing. Now, I don't know what the rest of the counties and cities in Virginia are doing. I'm sure that the county administrator has checked in with the Association of County Executives and has some idea of what other counties, how they've tackled this, or I pushed it aside. Either way, but they've tackled this. I found out that some. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here for public comment? Seeing none, Mr. Dines, anyone online for public comment? Board, anybody receive any emails, texts, calls?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any, but would you indulge a suggestion with regard to the agenda? I note we have 2 discussion items and then a presentation by the treasurer and the commissioner. Would we maybe not benefit from hearing their presentation first and then have discussion? That way we can consider what they present and not discuss and then have them present?
I would think that's fine. So if we can move up Mr. Jones and Mrs. Hart before our discussion is fine with me.
I'm in that, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a comment on that you're looking at me, Mr. Stonehill. So this was.
I was just wondering why it was done like that, or.
And you might want to ask Ms. Lackey, because I know she was working on putting this agenda together with LaWanda, and I believe that she was in communication with Ms. Hart and Mr. Jones. And so that's, I think we wanted to make sure there was a placeholder on the agenda for them to have a discussion of their points on things. So that's where we were on that.
Mrs. Lackey, is there a reason that we should have discussion prior to their presentation?
I think that's a perfectly fine recommendation to hear their presentation prior to discussion of, you know, what ordinances might look like, ordinance amendments.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we had no more emails. I got to close up public comment, and we will close public comment at that time. And I guess Mr. Jones and Mrs. Hart, whatever you all is up.
Good evening. I'll just say I started working here in 1999. And if I had to mention probably the major concern that I heard the most, or I hear the most, and Judy may say the same, is, hey, I got rid of my vehicle, but you're taxing me for it for the entire year. And I would usually explain it, hey, yes, that is accurate. However, whenever you acquired said vehicle, you didn't pay any taxes that year. So you're in essence are paying taxes at a lower value, which works to your advantage. And usually if I explained it, and I can tell you I used to hear that, I still hear it all of the time. So, I mean, I'm given that explanation, I'm given that multiple times a day. So it is a valid concern. And so usually that would de-escalate it, and most people may not enjoy it, but at least they would kind of understand the situation. However, I can say, honestly, probably over the last year or so, that concern has been coming up more and more. So that's kind of what brings us here today. I can say through my office, again, probably the concern has elevated 100%. So clearly our constituents are clamoring for a change, and I guess that's what brings us here today. I will say, because of that change and because of this meeting today, I reached out to a couple of my peers, a couple of treasurers, just to kind of get some opinions on why they made the change, if it was effective, that sort of thing. So I kind of came up with a couple of benefits to the county, for counties that I want to thank, if she's listening, because she said she might, Beth Curran. She is treasurer in Caroline. So I spoke a lot with her about their transformation. This is definitely, if we decide to go the prorating route, it definitely will probably increase revenue. Again, just as I spoke, we're going to be assessing vehicles at a higher value coming in as well as going out, whether that wasn't the case prior to. And public trust, public sentiment is, hey, this isn't fair the way that we're doing it right now. That I keep hearing that over and over again. And to be honest, I understand that concern as well. So if we went the prorating route, obviously public trust for the way that we're doing things should increase. So that's another benefit. A couple of challenges to localities who have already undertaken this. The workload for our staff is going to increase significantly. Customer service, a couple of things. Billing questions will go up. Initially, there's going to be a lot of confusion. You know, if we don't get the word out to everybody, there are going to be some people, obviously, who are going to not understand the process. So the demand on customer service will increase. The amount of traffic in the office, because now we're going to be billing more frequently for newer vehicles, as well as abatements for vehicles that people are disposing And then there's going to be an increase on demand for the accounts payable because if you pay for a vehicle, taxes on a vehicle, get rid of it. Now, of course, it's going to be abated. Well, that person's going to need a refund on said vehicle. So there's going to be an increase on accounts payable as far as more items that we will now need to refund. So also challenges to our day-to-day operations. Each item that's going to be affected, whether it's abated or whether we're creating a new item for a vehicle that someone purchased, it's going to have to be reviewed by somebody in my staff, every single item. So that is an increase on demand. New vehicles are going to have to be billed separately. They're not going to be able to be added as the system stands. It's not going to be added to the ticket. It's going to have to be a separate bill for the vehicle. If it's an item is disposed of, that is going to have to be abated. If they haven't paid anything, then obviously it's simple. It just decreases the bill. But if they paid on the bill, then that'll need to be refunded. The reason why we will have to review, because if there is a refund, we'll have to decide whether they have any delinquent taxes. If that's the case, we have to apply to it first. If they don't, then obviously we'll have to set it up to AP for a check. So the biggest thing I wanted to mention about those challenges, they can be overcome. I only mentioned them just as far as informational. Everybody I spoke to said it's definitely doable. The system that we have right now, Bright, actually one of their strengths is the prorating portion of it. So it can be done, but obviously training with staff, that's going to be a key thing, as well as adding staff. Every treasurer I talked to definitely recommended in the treasurer's office that we add at least one full-time employee because the demand will call for it. That kind of brings me to, I have a couple of questions. I wanted to know if there had been any discussions, I guess there will be discussions after this, on a timetable, because obviously, we're October now, so a turnaround by January 1 could be a bit difficult. But that is something we'd have to plan for. And two, the avenue that our offices would have to proceed to request an additional employee. Is that something that we'd have to go through HR? Is it something that we can come here during our allotted time during the board meeting? So I just needed some direction on that if the county decides to go in this direction. So that's it for me.
I have a question for you, Randy. When you mentioned the abatements, you have to look in each account.
Okay. So every item.
We've done 35 abatements.
We have to look at all 35
of accounts to see if there's already, if they owe money, then you just credited that.
If they
abatement.
Owe, that is accurate.
Okay, all right. I just want to understand that.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Mr. Jones, thank you so much for the brief and the information. I think I heard you say this, but I just want to clarify. When you spoke with the other treasurers, did they have the impression that the citizens were more satisfied with the prorated ordinance in place? Because, as you brought up, it could definitely lead to you paying more tax over the life of the car, because you'll be paying on that front end at a higher rate, and on the back end, you'll be paying less that 1 year, but it's at a lower rate. And so I get the idea, though it's fair. I mean, you're actually taxing at like the threshold of when the vehicle was owned. Did that make people just happier, or did that cause other problems? Do you know?
I think the results are mixed, like most decisions that are made. You're not going to be able to please everyone. So I think the results are mixed. I can just tell you my time in the treasurer's office, sometimes when I explain to customers, just as you just said, they will still say, hey, I know it may end up costing me more in the long run, but it is fair.
Yes.
That's the word that I hear a lot.
And I can appreciate that mentality.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Jones? All right. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Sart?
Thank you for having me in tonight. We also had Caroline County, a couple of folks from their office that does the prorating for Caroline County's office. The commissioner there is Mark Bassoon, and they of course have the same system. So they were able to show us exactly how to do an abatement, how to do the proration, and we printed screens, and it's just a matter of us going into the same screens and doing it. So it is doable. It can be done. However, we would have to, in order to do it, we have to give up the vehicle licensing fee. That if we were to leave that in there, we can't charge, two localities cannot charge a vehicle licensing fee. If we have one today, somebody gets a new car today, we have to look at all of those vehicles, wherever they came from, contact that locality and see if they paid a vehicle license fee. And our ads list from the DMV could be as many as 300 vehicles, depending on the weeks. So that's going to be a burden on our office to have to call all these localities. Caroline County gave up their vehicle license fee, and that was one of the main reasons for that, because it was just too much to do. And besides, they said that you will recoup that money that you will no longer collect for the license fee. This year, we have 36,602 vehicles. We collected $739,591 in licensing fee. And that, they said, it would be recouped very quickly. $739,591. And probably 75% of our calls are complaints about what that fee is. Why do I pay it? I don't get anything for it. They don't understand it. Of course, we try to explain it, and they still say, well, I don't have one on my car. I don't have one on my car, and I have to pay it, and I don't get anything for it. We let them know that if you take it to the landfill, you have to have one. And people say, well, I can't take my trash on my motorcycle, and they have to pay it on their motorcycle as well. So let's turn it around, and let's don't slow down a lot of the questions that they have and a lot of the phone calls that the taxpayers will have. By prorating, this will balance out, and quickly you will get that $739,591 back. But I want to encourage that we do need to drop that in order to do the proration. Based on Caroline's experience, that's why we're going that route. And I also feel that having to start this in January 1 of this coming year, it doesn't give us, my office, enough time to prepare for it. January through June we are swamped. We are busy as all get out. We send out more than 1,600 business licenses. They're due back March 1. We send out as many as 90 credit for the elderly applications. They're due back March 1. We have over 1,000 business equipment forms that we send out and receive in, and they have to be calculated and entered in the system before the bills go out. We collect the state income tax. This past year, we had 750. And as those state income tax come in, we have to do them that day. We have two ladies in the office that do it. One does it one day, the next day the other one does it. They alternate days, and they have to be done. And that's very time consuming because you need to concentrate. You have to make sure they're correct. Enter them in the system. That takes time. We do that through May 1st. And after billing, there are lots of abatements. This year we had 2,100 abatements. They all have to be done almost on a daily basis to keep the records in the treasurer's office straight. And we have to have our records in correctly so we can send our personal property to JD Power, NADA. We have to send our boat file off to vessel valuations. When we get that file back, there's always a lot of boats that we have to manually value to get them in the system. And then we have to make sure all of our real estate is entered so we can print our book for the first of the year. And then Randy takes our information. He has to go over it and make sure the numbers match, sends it out. And when the bills are mailed, it's all hands on deck. Our phones don't stop ringing. Our door is like a revolving door. His door's the same. His phone's the same until June 5th. Actually, till June 6th, it stops. So I'm concerned about having enough time with what we do. And that's just part of what we do the first of the year. I'm just concerned that this year we may not be ready to start January 1, having, to train someone, to hire someone, to get our office ready for an additional employee. And then what else we do on January 1. That's my concern. I mean, it is doable. We can do it, but are we ready to do it?
So I'm sorry, I'm hearing, again, just make sure I understand. So both offices, you're anticipating the need for another full-time employee in order to handle, if we were to move forward with prorating, to be able to handle just that situation.
Yes, I have checked with several localities. One of them, he said, oh, no, you need two. And I'm thinking, no, let me start with one. I feel like one. And
Just out of curiosity, which locality was it? Was it one with more citizens, so it's more volume, or?
No, that I couldn't tell you right offhand.
Okay.
I'd have to look in that.
Okay, just trying to understand. I appreciate that. Just trying to understand the ramifications of the decision. And
yeah,
and
I get, several different answers from the commissioners, but the majority of them said you at least need one full-time employee to dedicate their time to doing this.
Tracking.
Because we download DMV once a week. So we have an ads list for people who buy vehicles, and we have a deleted list for people who sell their vehicles, and there's several hundred, as many as 300 on those lists.
Okay.
And so they have to be done Monday through Friday, because the next Monday we get another list.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a follow-up question to that? So you're saying you are already doing that, though? You have someone already checking the lists every week?
Oh, yeah, because they drop the vehicles into our accounts.
Right.
And there's codes in there, and our staff, the girls in personal property, have to go in each account where that and take off the codes that DMV puts in and make the vehicle active.
Right.
And then they verify addresses and make sure we have a correct address. But sometimes folks could move here from, say, Fredericksburg, and they still have a Fredericksburg address. So we have to perhaps check DMV, do some checking, and get a correct King George address on them, because we figured, well, that can't be right. They're in Fredericksburg address. So there are some things that has to be done. We have to touch each one of them when they come in. They're not just there and ready to go. We have to go in every account that's on the list.
Okay. So do you have any data for us? What's the delta from year to year for like the last 4 or 5 years? The change in the number of vehicle registrations in the county?
I don't have
the number of vehicles that you're dealing with?
That I don't have. I can.
Okay. That. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Quick question. To learn the system for the new employee, how long would it take for everybody to learn how to do this process?
Oh, I don't know.
Because you were mentioning, we were talking about January 1, like, do you have a timetable of how long it would take to bring up to?
I was thinking the beginning of the fiscal year, but I don't think it can start the fiscal year. He found that out.
Yeah, I asked that question, whether we could start July 1. It's like, files have to be run as of January 1, and then changes are made throughout the year. So, you didn't ask me the question. However, in my situation for a new employee, for a comfort level of just bringing them up to speed on just customer service and how to use the system, I mean, it could be anywhere from 2 to 3 months before I would want to turn them over to a project such as this. So if this is a decision that needs to be made, I would respectfully ask that it be made sooner rather than later, because I need to hire somebody almost yesterday.
And
So
I as well.
Second with that, so you, with the staff you currently have now, you would not be able to do this process without one more person? Is what I'm hearing?
Well, in my, it's going to take them away from their normal.
Right, but I mean, like, you say January 1st, we decided to do it January 1st. Without that one employee, it would be quite difficult to do it.
It will be the next year, yes.
All right, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Which counties around us do the prorating? Like, who did you all talk to
City of
besides
Fredericksburg,
Caroline?
I couldn't get a hold of Lois in Fredericksburg to ask her, but the city does it.
Fredericksburg City does?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I did a brief survey online today and was able to note Stafford County, Caroline County. Caroline County has been doing this since 2013. And the city of Fredericksburg all advertise on their websites that they prorate by month.
So just Caroline, Fred, Stafford around here? And who did you all contact? Just Caroline?
I've talked to Caroline, I've talked to Commissioner in Tappahannock, I've talked to Commissioner in Lynchburg.
And they all prorate?
Tappahannock, he does not. Lynchburg does.
Okay. License fee, is that our old county sticker? Okay, that's the old county sticker, which I thought. All right. So for your offices, can you give us a example? Somebody moves here from Stafford. So they move to King George, they got to go to DMV, they got to change the registration of their vehicle at, DMV right here. Where does it go? Walk us through your part of that.
We'll get the download from DMV and get that individual's information if they don't come in the office first. A lot of times they'll come in maybe to get a county sticker, or just to come in and let us know that they now live here and registered here. And that's how we get it. But most likely it's through the DMV downloads.
So that's what you were talking about. They're going to have to go through there and pull out those.
All of those ads, all of those that have come into the county or purchased a vehicle, they will have to, the ones that moved here, I guess not necessarily, if they purchase a vehicle from an individual, but a car dealer, most likely, if it's a new vehicle, they won't have the license fee. But if you purchase it from an individual, we have to call that locality and make sure, did they pay for the license fee? And besides, that can't be prorated as well, the license fee.
So you're saying if somebody up in Stafford had already paid their license fee, you can't charge that again here when they register it here in King George?
That's correct.
Not for that year. You can charge it next year.
There's no like statewide system that you can go into each county and see that kind of, they haven't gotten to that point.
No, we're on good terms. Commissioners' offices with calling each other. We do that all the time. All commissioners call each other about vehicles,
That's all I have. Thank you.
I have a couple more questions. And Ms. Lackey, I have a question for you. And the answer is, if we did get rid of the vehicle license fee, is there something other mechanism, like a different for access to the dump? And I've heard other localities, including Caroline, have gotten rid of the license fee because it's just too much. I always questioned it when I moved here. But with that also, have you done any research on other localities and their prorating or getting rid of the vehicle license fees, Ms. Lackey?
I haven't done extensive research on that, but a common way to just verify residency is to look at driver's license. Obviously, that's not going to suffice for everybody if they've changed their address. They don't always get a new license, or if they own property in the county, they may be eligible for using tax facilities even if they don't reside in the county. So there would have to be some other mechanisms for the folks at the convenience center to check the status of eligibility to use the convenience center.
Well, I feel that should stay the same. They're still going to come in and get their county sticker.
So we could still use that.
Yeah, I just ordered quite a lot of them, so we
Yeah,
need to
that's-
keep giving them out for a while.
But my second question for Ms. Lackey is for the prorating in other localities, have you done more extensive research on that?
I thought that I had looked at the surrounding jurisdictions, but I can't find it right offhand, unfortunately. I would venture to say I think that the most, if not all of our surrounding jurisdictions do prorate. Now it's an option. It's completely optional to the locality. There's no requirement. So, but that's just kind of the trend in the region.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Lackey, hearing from both Ms. Hart and Mr. Jones, there seems to be a request to not move forward with it in this current calendar year due to just staffing concerns and having staff in place. If we were to move forward with advertising for a public hearing and moving forward with adopting, could it be done in such a way where the ordinance is adopted and goes into effect on a particular fiscal year or calendar year that's further out, or would we have to wait and then make the adoption in that like calendar year that we're looking to make it happen?
You could enact it, but have an effective date that doesn't start right away. For example, if you wanted to start it, June 5th, when the payments are due of next year, that would be a possible potential date. But it would take effect after 30 days. So you'd have to have a minimum of 30 days before it took effective date. But there's nothing wrong with a delayed effective date.
Okay.
I think that's similar to how the cigarette tax was initially adopted.
Okay.
I think it was adopted several months before it actually took effect.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Nothing else, folks, on this?
So I know we have a proposed ordinance in front of us. Obviously, we can't adopt it tonight because it has no public hearing or anything. I'll just share, I guess since the discussion, with the increase in staff, I wouldn't want to do this, I wouldn't want to do this calendar year. Based off our commissioner revenue and our treasurer, their feedback of the impact to their offices, making sure that we would include in the budget that we would have staffing in place in the next budget in order to provide them with the support they need in order to execute this kind of an activity. I would say I think we should push it out that far at the least. I'm also going to say, considering it's going to cost more taxpayer dollars to enact, and looking at it, I like the idea of fairness, I really do. But looking at it from the perspective of you're paying over the lifetime of the car, you're probably paying less overall, which could be, nice in that regards from that perspective. And the increased cost to enact these activities, I would be hesitant to begin with, but I kind of would like to move forward with at least advertising a public hearing because I would like to hear what the citizens have to say. And if, there's a real strong feeling that, that's what the desire is, I can't fault people for saying, let's just run it square and fair. And even if it costs more money, if people feel comfortable with that, then that's kind of how I feel.
Would you want to do a public hearing this year or wait until next year?
I'm fine with doing the public hearing sooner than later. Because if we could push off even the enactment date, like even if we're to adopt the ordinance, like let's say we move forward and there's a lot of strong desire from citizens, yes, we want to move forward with this, we could then adopt it and say, I really feel strongly we shouldn't do it for this calendar year. Like, that's just too soon. So I'd say, yes, okay, let's have a further date out to enact. That would be my recommendation. Obviously, I don't have the say, but that's my feelings. But I would like to hear from the public and give them the opportunity to speak at a public hearing. Just kind of how I feel about it.
So I would like to move forward with it. And if we feel we want to adopt it and need to delay it until July 1 to the new fiscal year, that will give our elected officials some time to come up with, develop a solid budget for how much they think this is going to cost for a person and a workflow and the time to train someone. But yeah, I want to move forward with it. I will note for the record, I was a strong proponent of eliminating that vehicle license fee in the last budget cycle, and I didn't have any support for it. So if this helps the taxpayers, makes it fair overall, and helps us eliminate that vehicle license fee, I'm all for it. So, and I'm not necessarily saying, and let's eliminate the vehicle license fee right now at the same time. But if we get this rolling and it is in fact the case that we need to go ahead and eliminate the vehicle license fee, let's say we start this in July 1 and are rolling for a few months and determine by January 1, we need to eliminate the vehicle license fee, we could do that within 6 months. If, your staff are able to bring us data that supports that the collections are coming in, the increase in revenue is coming in to offset what we would collect from the vehicle license fee. I would love to see that happen too, 6 months later. So yes, I would like to move forward with a public hearing on this.
I agree. The only thing I would, if we were going to prorate, I'd like to get rid of the vehicle license fee at the same time. I think in the end, we will recoup and we will make the citizens feel that they're being treated a lot fairer by doing it all at the same time. My only concern is when the bills go out, they have to be paid by June 5th. So that's kind of like we're prorating after, so it's only half a year they're kind of getting prorated in vehicle license. That's my only concern.
I'll just say, and I can bring back data later, but from what I'm hearing, it has to be a January 1 deal. So it's either we have to push this and make it happen this January 1, or we need
15 months.
To it. Yes. Just from files and getting them all in the system and adding and subtracting and how Bright's set up now. So,
Ms. Lackey, or I should guess I should ask my colleagues, would you be amenable to having Ms. Lackey look into, not that I don't believe Mr. Jones, but just have her look into it and provide guidance and help us understand from a legal perspective so she can weigh in on it? And
now,
then,
when I mentioned that, I wasn't speaking legally as much as logistically.
Okay.
From our standpoint.
Okay.
So
I misunderstood. I thought it was required by.
I just meant logistics.
Okay. If it's purely logistics, then I personally would be saying I think we should push it out to then January 1st of 2020. What is that? 2024 for enactment based off our elected officials' feedback. So.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I disagree, Mr. Granger.
Okay.
I'm not willing to push this off that far. I mean, now you're saying it's gonna, you're not saying legally, now you're saying logistically, so now it's gonna take you a year to do this? I mean, a year and 3 months to do this? But Ms. Hart previously said, we could do this by January 1. You said that a few minutes ago. We could do this by January 1. It would be hard. We would need to bring staff in pretty quickly. Mr. Jones said you would need to know sooner rather than later because you need to be rolling hiring someone to do this. So either you can and you think you can, or you can't, but then can't is not 15 months later. I'm sorry. That's unacceptable to me.
Oh, no, that's exactly what I was just saying. if we need to make this happen on January 1 of 2023, we will. I was just saying logistically, it has to be one or the other. I wasn't saying that we had to push it back. I was just saying I don't think we can start it in the middle of the fiscal year. As far as Bright is concerned with the system that we're using, I don't think that that's possible.
Mr. Chair, I would rather just do January 1 because the citizens would appreciate it a lot more than waiting because they're going to get that bill and they need to do it January 1. And if we need to send them, maybe since we have a good relationship with other localities, maybe somebody from Caroline could come up and help train somebody, or we can send them down there. That may be a possibility.
And we have done that. They have come to us and we are planning to go to Caroline County. We just haven't had time to get that squared away to do it.
I'm going to defer to the commissioner's office on that because the burden is going to be higher on their office. So,
do you have the funds in place now to hire someone for the rest of the fiscal year in order to support this activity, or would you need more funds?
I'll need more funds.
I would assume that would be the answer.
I don't have the money to hire someone yet.
Okay.
That means a desk, a computer, a printer. So it's not just a salary that we're talking about.
No, I understand. It is an impact, and obviously then that means we need to address the budget, make an update to that, which again, when would you need someone on board? Because you can't even hire someone until you have the funds in place.
Right. And
that's a process. And honestly, we can't change the budget until we've adopted an ordinance change. I don't know. I don't think it's wise to try to push it for this January. I really don't. I appreciate that there's a real desire to. I really think it's a bad idea.
That you have to approve.
Yeah.
And your goings on between.
And you have to wait for us to approve.
Yeah.
Before you move forward.
Right.
I just disagree very vehemently with looking at it for January 1st. We got 3 months and we have government process to get through before it even gets to the point where the commissioner's office and the treasurer's office could even begin the hiring process.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Lackey, could not we do the public hearing and do an amended budget at the same time as this prorated? I know that's unusual, but is that a possibility?
That is a possibility.
Thank you.
And if I may
Mr.
ask,
Miller, you have something?
I was just going to ask Ms. Lackey, if you adopt, you have the public hearing and the board adopts, obviously it has 30 days, but administratively, could you be hiring and making organizational changes within the two offices before the 30 days and is in effect? Or, I mean, we could certainly accomplish that if it's legal to do that. So I'm hearing what the concerns that Mr. Granger had is that we technically couldn't even be amending the budget until after the 30 days has passed. Am I reading that incorrect?
We can amend the budget as we want. We don't even have to, it doesn't have to even be
you can amend
with
the budget
ordinance.
at the next board meeting.
We could. I'm just saying, though, it has to be brought forth. There's process involved, and it's not an instantaneous thing, and it's a short time frame. I'm sticking with, I get it. We want to move forward. I think it's unwise to try to push it for this year.
And that vehicle license fee could always be dropped January 1 of 2023. And that's a step in the right direction. There's a thought there. And that would satisfy a lot of taxpayers. If logistically the rest of it couldn't take place by January 1 of 23, and we had to wait to 24 to prorate, we could get rid of those fees January 1 of next year.
I'd be amenable with moving forward with that. Obviously, I know I'm not the only one who has a say, and other people may disagree. So, but that's how I would feel about it. Obviously, I would like to move forward at least with the public hearing, though.
Mrs. Hart, dropping of the license fee, that was like $740 roughly. Okay. Ms. Washington?
Is the board so interested in hearing what localities prorate ordinances? Because I was doing research on that and I have a list of surrounding localities that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we have Stafford County, York, Westmoreland previously had it, they no longer have it. Caroline County, Spotsylvania, Fredericksburg, Prince William, Fairfax, Hanover, Gloucester, and you can do it on houses only. Henrico, James City County, Goochland, Richmond, Albemarle, Charlottesville, Fauquier, and Loudoun County.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, ma'am. Did you have something? Okay.
No, but I think you asked Ms. Lackey a question, right?
Yes, but I think I got my answer. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't a feeling on the board that we had to pass the ordinance first before we could do anything from an HR standpoint or from an administrative standpoint to hire people. I mean, it's kind of like, I guess if you didn't pass the ordinance, then the positions would go away. But, you know, we could begin that process knowing that at some point this is going to be an ordinance. I wanted to make sure that it was okay for us to start that process. Because I wouldn't want to start the process 30 days from now. If it was adopted today, that means we couldn't start hiring or considering hiring any until November. That would put them at a burden. I could see that.
I would just from an optics perspective of saying we're going to start the process of hiring people as we entertain an ordinance with a public hearing. To me, what that says is the board's already made a decision and it doesn't matter what people say.
Well, then I think then the thing would be, if we want to streamline this, would be the same night that you have the public hearing, you might have an agenda item to add to your budget or to amend your budget.
I think that would be a reasonable way to handle it, but I'm still going to say I think we should hold it off. I would be unwilling to entertain the removal of the fees. Just how I'm feeling about it. So I'll let my colleagues speak to how they feel.
So I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Granger. I still would like to see this January 1. I don't see any reason why, if we direct staff to advertise a public hearing, that's what, 14 days minimum advertisement, right? So let's forget the rest of this week. So that's next week. So public hearing, first meeting in November, right? Because that would be the next. Unless we did a special meeting, it would be the first meeting in November, would be the public hearing on the ordinance, and the ordinance could be adopted that night. This 30-day thing that everybody is worried about, you don't need to worry about that. That night, if we adopted the ordinance, we could amend the budget and direct staff to hire. In the meantime, leading up to the public hearing, we would trust that our commissioner and our treasurer would be working on developing, again, contacting their colleagues and doing some more background research on developing the processes, the workflow for this new person in each of your offices, so that the workflow and the job description and responsibility is ready to go in the event the board does adopt the ordinance at the first meeting in November. That's how I'm looking at this.
Do we know what the cost in budget would be? Do we have even an estimate? Because that's obviously very important. I'm not willing to just cut a blank check and say, let's move forward that way without understanding what the fiscal impact would be to our budget. I know it's two positions, so it's not going to be comparative to the whole of the budget, but it has an impact, and it's not something we budgeted for this year. I'm sticking with, I think it's not the right, I think it's moving too fast, and we didn't plan for it this year. We don't have the funds already aligned for it. I think we should hold off.
Then the hiring process, I'm sitting here thinking about having it out there so many days or weeks advertising, and then you get them all in, and then for me, it takes a while to read all these. I read them. HR gives them all to me, and I read them and go over them and go over them and read them again. and separate them, best one, I think, second, that takes a while. And then calling them in for interviews. That to me is a long process, and I don't want to rush through that. I don't know how Randy does his, but to me, that doesn't need to be rushed.
Mrs. Bender, anything?
I'm trying to weigh, but I know this is, I still think we could do it by January 1st, but if we move on it.
If you go back to what I believe Randy was talking about, and is you could have this in place, but is there some kind of and I think one of the board members also brought that up. I mean, if you have this in place on January 1, is when it becomes the first time you might do it, could that be somewhere March 1 or something like that? Or is that, where you could put that? And I think Ms. Lackey indicated you could have that kind of a thing in place as well, where it doesn't start immediately on January 1. I know from the standpoint of the system they have and all that, you've got to do things like that, but is there a way to have a transition period? Kind of like the cigarette tax, you did have a transition period of a couple months, I believe. Is that something that works for people? I don't know. I mean, you need to wait. I mean, you let your attorney tell you that you can do that or not. So, but my thought would be, if there's concerns about on January 1, you're not going to have the staff or the organizational structure in place to do it, then maybe we have it, the ordinance is effective, or I mean, it goes into a place on January 1, but they're not going to begin the process of doing the prorated until like 90 days after or something like that. Is that something that you guys can do, or am I even making sense here?
You are making sense to me. Me saying, hey, logistically, because I asked that question today when I met with Beth about, hey, is this something if we wanted to start in July 1, could we? And her response was, no, you have to start this on January 1 this year or next year. So I'm basing that on the conversation with one colleague. I don't have any problems of calling around with some of my other peers to verify that, to see if there are some other examples of that, whether it's been done differently. I'm already going to have to do that, as you said, as far as the workflow, coming up with what the impact is going to be to us or to my budget. I'm already going to have to do that anyways. So I don't have any problems from my standpoint of doing that legwork. Again, just as I was asking, I just need a timetable. Hey, when do I need to get this information back to you? Is there further discussion? I just need guidance. That's all I'm looking for. So
Then you're going to have, I feel it's going to be an issue if it doesn't start January 1, if it starts in March or July. The folks, it's a real issue for folks that purchase a vehicle in, say, February 1st. March 1st. I got to pay a whole year on a car I kept for 2 months. I get it. But, that's the way it is. And then they find out your prorating starts then, and they got rid of that car earlier in the year. Those are the folks that, I feel for all of them that sell it and still have to pay. But when they keep it, we've had a guy sold it on January 1, bought his new one on January 1, sold his new one old one on the 2nd, several years ago. Anyway, it could be rough on a lot of folks. I don't think it would go down well.
yeah, I definitely think, while that's a good thought, I definitely think starting it, you're going to have not be able to please everybody, but people who got rid of their vehicles in January or March or February, they could have an issue with that. So, I'll just come back to continue to say, I'm just looking for guidance. If this needs to happen January 1, then we'll make it happen January 1. If obviously impact to our offices, if it was the next January 1, I feel like we could have a seamless project in place. But if we need to make it happen this January 1, I feel like that we could. But we'll give it our best shot.
Well, I guess I haven't spoken up yet, but I'm with Mr. Granger. I think this is too quick, too fast. I would like to hear from the public. I would like to do a public hearing and see what people have to say. And if this is something they really want to do, we can have everything lined up for January 24 to start. Mr. Jones said that would be much more seamless. And, I'd rather have something done properly up front than forced and then having to fix it later on. I see too much of that. And, I'm not really keen on adding 2 new employees to the 2 offices this year. We had such an issue with the budget right now. I'd like some more research. I'm going to even call some of these counties myself and find out, and speak to them, pros and cons, what they like to do. But I would like to have a public hearing, November, December, whatever, and hear and talk to the public. I want to hear what they want to say. And if they're all overwhelming saying that, yes, we want to do that, then we'll move forward and get that lined up. I would be in favor of dropping the license fee for January 1, like Mr. Granger and everybody said, that's a start in the right direction. Let's see where we make up that $740,000, but so that's my feeling. So I'd like to have a public hearing either later in November, 1st of December, something like that.
You need a motion.
I go back to what Mr. Collins had requested, that there were no motions at this meeting. And
I agree.
I realize that you guys can.
He made a motion and it was not approved.
Okay.
So
I just. Okay.
So I appreciate you bringing up his concern, but we have business to do. So that's just
what Mr. Stonehill was indicating is we would either do a public hearing in November or December of this year. But what would be the timeline? How would we write that ordinance? If we need I guess we need a direction on, is it to take effect January 1, 23, or is it to take effect January 1, 24? I guess that you guys need to make that decision tonight if that's.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I'll add in, I'm amenable to the changing it to the 24th as long as we eliminate the vehicle license fee.
Yeah, it would, if we do something, it would be January 1, 24. We wouldn't be able to get it in place for 23. So.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? So what you're proposing then, if I'm hearing everyone correctly, is to not implement the proration, but to eliminate the vehicle license, to prorate starts January 1, 2024. And vehicle license fee gets dropped January 1, 2023. But that $740,000 worth of revenue, right, from the vehicle license fee, Ms. Hart, that we're not going to have, that we already know we're not going to have, and now we're just willing to let's wait and see, let's just see where we can make up for it. I just, $740,000 is a lot of money. And I was willing to do it during the last budget process. And again, I didn't have any support for it. So why are we willing to just go on faith and get rid of the fee and not know where that $740,000 is going to come from this time?
So the registration fee, if we enacted this on January 1st, you would have already collected everything already. So it would actually be for the following fiscal year, not part of this budget. Is that correct? Or will we be putting, I'm sorry.
We will collect first half bills. It'll still be in FY23.
So it'll be 23. So those would be removed.
If I'm tracking correctly, that is what you're saying is going to be removed, yes.
Okay.
If I could make a suggestion, perhaps we bring you back a little bit more analysis that shows, one, the financial impact that Ms. Kupka is indicating a concern about, if the timing of that reduction. And then I think the other thing would be Ms. Lackey would obviously need to draft an ordinance that would talk about the implementation of a prorated arrangement. But also, Ms. Lackey can answer this for me or to clarify this, but if you're going to drop the vehicle license tax, does that require an ordinance on behalf of the board, or is that just something that you just say you're not going to do? I mean, I would think that it's an amendment to an existing ordinance. Okay.
Section 9.
But I'll defer to Ms. Lackey on the legal parts of all this.
Mrs. Lackey?
Yes, I believe we would need a notice of public hearing to amend, the taxes and license fees that were implemented for the current fiscal year.
Mrs. Hart, you said earlier that dropping that would make it easier to enact January 1. How was that again? Or why is that easier?
Because if it's in there, that can't be prorated, and as well, we have to make sure that the folks didn't pay that like they should be in another account. Far from you to the transfer to make sure that the license fee wasn't paid.
Is your mic on?
You're not on the mic.
Sorry. Yes, we have to track and make sure that the previous owner didn't pay that license fee somewhere else.
But if we did away with that license fee, say January 1, so you wouldn't then be looking, you wouldn't have to be calling Fredericksburg to say.
No. When we do that download, we don't have to call and check on all those vehicles and make sure they didn't pay it somewhere else.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure everyone understands the vehicle license fee is only paid one time in the year, right? And it's in the June tax bill. So if we do this, it has a $739,000 impact to this current budget right now.
Thank you. And that is a great clarification. I apologize. I've gotten my wires crossed. I would not be in favor of moving forward with the drop in the license fee for this fiscal year. It's already been accounted in the budget. I would be amenable to addressing it in the next fiscal year. So that would be July 1st. And then looking to adopt the proration ordinance to kick in January 1st, 2024. But thank you, Ms. Kupka. That was very pertinent. And yes, I clearly messed that up. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. I was not thinking I'm thinking years, not physical years.
And please allow me to apologize for tapping my fingers at everyone. That was rather rude, but I felt like I was not being understood why this was a huge concern, would have a huge impact on the current fiscal year budget. And we just can't do that right now. That's why the right time to do it would have been during the normal budget cycle. So hopefully during the normal budget cycle coming up this year, we'll all get behind this. Thank you.
Thank you for the tapping.
Mr. Chair, I have a suggestion, since we still have a few questions, is that we have staff come back with an analysis hopefully by our next board meeting to be able to answer some of these questions so we could proceed forward in a better process, because we all have different questions on this. And I know I've spoken to several of the Caroline supervisors on this matter. They were shocked that we still did the vehicle tax, and they had some insight. So I'm sure their staff could help, explain a little bit more to us.
So if we did a public hearing in end of November, December, and if you guys could come up with different scenarios for us, with more information about, that we can look at, if that's possible.
Now, when you ask, could you clarify the different scenarios? I have right now as an action item to come up with some workflow, financial impact, job description. And I'll be prepared to present any and all of that at a later date if you like. But anything else?
I think that what you were wanting is the scenarios, but a lot of that has just been clarified. So if it's all taking effect January 1 of 2024, then, the urgency of we can provide you with an analysis to show you what the loss would be versus the gain, but that may not necessarily, I don't know if they can do that the next meeting, which is the 18th. Maybe we need a little bit of time. Why don't we work with them, and then we can get it set up to bring it back for a discussion item and have some analysis done that'll show revenue loss versus revenue gain. If you enact one tax and you do it prorated versus you get rid of the license fee, we can show you what the difference would be.
Right. That's
Okay.
I didn't know that's what I wanted, but that's what I want.
Well, and I think Caroline can tell us how they made up, because I've spoken to them before, of that revenue loss initially because they said they've made it, and it's been fine, and it made the taxpayers feel better.
By prorating it, they made it up very quickly, prorating.
That would also give Mr. Collins time to weigh in on this subject.
We'll plan on bringing something. I mean, I'd like to target, and you tell me if I'm maybe ambitious, but maybe that first meeting in November, which is 3 weeks from now, or I think we could probably have a pretty good analysis, or do you need a little bit more time?
That's fine for me.
Okay. I should say, if that's okay with the board. So I'm not. I want to make sure. That would be our target when we could get you something back, if that's okay. If you need it faster, we'll do it. But I just didn't want it to burden them in terms of what they're having to deal with.
I think that's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to, I don't see it exactly on the agenda, but to bring up again about the value of the cars using the NADA, clean, average, or rough condition categories. Remember we said, so can we have that discussion since that would be part of the analysis. And where I bring it up is the value that Ms. Hart's office uses to assess each vehicle. She uses clean, but there is also clean, average, and rough. I don't think so. I got this from our office. They photocopied the front of the NADA book, which is the book they use to value the cars. Because one thing I have heard from quite a few citizens is, number one, the value that is charged. Some people feel their car is a high mileage car and they're being charged as if it's a clean car. I know I have a vehicle that has rust on it, but it still gets a clean valuation. It probably should be rough. But I know that would be a challenge for Ms. Hart's office trying to do that. So I don't know how we square that. I mean, maybe average. I even asked her one question, is if we could take a car up to 5 years as a clean title, and then 5 to 10 average, and then after 10 years rough. But Ms. Hart had said that would be a little difficult.
Yeah, based on the descriptions here, I think, maybe I spoke too soon. I think it'd be hard to do that. It would have to be the clean. Now, Fred brings in pictures of his vehicle the inside's ripped out and there's no fenders, but it's work in progress and he's going to eventually get it back on the road, that to me would clearly, could be rough perhaps.
But from my understanding, there is only legally, can there only be one way of doing it?
Right, yes. And our system could not hold assessing Summit Clean, Summit Average, and it would probably cost us more to try to do that. So, yes.
Because that is one complaint I've heard from quite a few residents is about that we use Clean. But that would also be a revenue hit also.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Where is this from?
The NADA book, National
NADA.
Mm-hmm.
And right now you're going everything as a clean vehicle?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I ask one of our attorneys a question? I'm looking at the state code section that Ms. Bender is referencing, 58.1-3503, general classification of tangible personal property. And there are two sections. There's a section A, and then there's a section B. And section B reads, methods of valuing property may differ among the separate categories so long as each method used is uniform within each category, is consistent with requirements of this section, and may reasonably be expected to determine actual fair market value as determined by the Commissioner of the Revenue or other assessing official. However, assessment ratios shall only be used with the concurrence of the local governing body. Here, and I know that was long, but I wanted to read everything so no one thought I cut anything out. A Commissioner of the Revenue shall, upon request, take into account the condition of the property. The term, quote, condition of the property, quote, includes but is not limited to technological obsolescence of property where technological obsolescence is an appropriate factor for valuing such property. The Commissioner of the Revenue shall make available to taxpayers on request a reasonable description of his valuation methods. So this code section B says a Commissioner of Revenue shall, upon request. Could we, and I wouldn't imagine that council is ready to surmise on this right now, but can we take a look at that, at how that reads? Because that reads to me like if the taxpayer comes to you and asks you to take into account the condition of the property, then you're asked to do that. And then you do start to look at this stuff. You do start to look at, like I've got a 04 Suburban with rust all over the bottom of it, and it's got holes in the bumper and I mean, all kinds of crazy old stuff. So I don't know if we could get a legal opinion on that, because it looks to me like shall means you must. And so maybe we need to do a better job of letting constituents know, number one, if this is not in our local ordinance, we need to put this part of it in our local ordinance. And if it is, we need to do a better job, whether that's us, the commissioner's website, anything else, of publicizing to our taxpayers that, hey, this is the standard rate, this is how this gets done, unless you go and ask for this. Thank you.
Is Ms. Blackie, I think she's still on, isn't she? Yeah.
That might be a bit much to ask.
I think it's a lot to ask. I don't mind saying it's
But I think it's a fair question to get a legal review.
yeah, I don't mind saying I think it's a lot to put someone on the spot to ask that. Yeah. But if we could have some follow-up, maybe in the county attorney's report at the next meeting for some clarification on that, it might be helpful. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Lackey, you're off the hot seat, but if you could get that research for us for the next meeting.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you. All right, I think we're done with that one. So now we're looking at the refund of personal property tax.
Yes. Do you want to have Ms. Lackey or Ms. Washington just kind of go through it and some of the things that I know were discussion points from our standpoint about surplus and the designation, the whole process?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, I'd be happy to kick off that topic, and I will acknowledge that Jessica was very instrumental in helping with the current draft. So effective July 1, the General Assembly enacted a provision that allows localities to give a refund of personal property taxes in the event of a surplus, although they are still obligated to apply that surplus to any outstanding taxes, fees, or interest of any other types of taxes or fees due to the locality. We have seen that there are at least 2 jurisdictions that have opted to use this authority, York County and the city of Salem. And so those jurisdictions we've kept in mind with the possible drafting. Now, the term surplus is not defined. So one of the more critical things is that the local ordinance has to define what a surplus is. Stafford County has an ordinance that allows for a refund in the event of a real estate tax surplus. And they define their surplus as in excess of 10% of the budget projection. The reason for that is that your balances are always in flux. People are applying for tax refunds for up to 3 years after taxes are due. So we don't want to have a shortfall because somebody who might be due a refund on another basis hasn't yet applied. So our recommendation is that in the event that the board does want to consider a refund on the basis of a surplus, that you allow yourself a little cushion for the reasoning that you don't want to have end up with a shortfall. Now, Donna Hahn has been, her staff has had the auditors in the office over the past couple of weeks. They're still in the process of an audit, so we do not yet have a staff determination as to whether or not a surplus exists. But the directive to me was to have this placeholder ordinance available for you all to consider in the event of a surplus. So the ordinance that I've circulated to you does define what a surplus might be, but it requires that in the event that this ordinance is adopted, which would require, of course, a public hearing and a future meeting, but if it was adopted, the board would have to also separately declare a surplus by resolution in order to have the surplus process implemented. The surplus would be in the form of a credit to future tax bills. It's anticipated that due to the time and administrative involvement, if a surplus is determined for this fiscal year, then the refund would be in the form of a credit on personal property taxes due of June 5th of 2023. So that's just that's how we've structured it to allow administrative time to process it. It would be in the form of a credit to everyone who is paying personal property tax in the next calendar year 2023. In the event that somebody, for whatever reason, no longer is paying personal property taxes in King George County, they would be eligible for a paper check. So that's just kind of a general overview, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions for Mrs. Lockey?
Ms. Lackey, thank you for the report. For surplus, I'm just going to ask for a little bit of a clarification. This would be any budget surplus would be considered like that amount if it is in excess of 10% of the county's annual personal property tax budget. It's not like we're breaking up like the surplus, saying some of this surplus is because of real estate property tax and some of it's because of personal property tax and some of it's because of, whatever other taxes. Is it all surplus? And then if that surplus, all that surplus is in excess of 10% of the personal property tax budget, then a refund would be issued?
It would be based just on the revenue projections in the budget for this type of personal property tax, the motor vehicle taxes. So if there's surplus of other types of taxes, it would not be considered for purposes of the credit.
I'm tracking. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I weigh in? I would like to move forward with this because it's a tool that we have available. If we enact it, it's ready if there is. And if not, then we don't do anything. But there's also a safety measure in place where to be able to do something, we have to take another separate board action. So, and to me, just personally, we all heard it during the budget season. We did lower the rate from last year, but the values went way up and people felt it and we all felt it. And, to me, this is a sign of good faith on our part. It is the taxpayers' money. And if we have more than we end up having more than we needed, we should do what we can to try to give it back to them. So I very strongly support moving forward with this one. Thank you.
I would agree. I would be amenable to looking to try to do a public hearing. I guess it would be in the beginning of November because it has to be 14 days. I wouldn't say let's hold a special meeting, but I'd be amenable to saying let's move forward with it for the November 1st meeting and have a public hearing.
I just have one question for Ms. Lackey first. Ms. Lackey, how much does each citizen get back? How is that determined?
So the amount would be based on the percentage of their contribution to the surplus. So first, the surplus amount would have to be determined, and then we'd have to look at the percentage of what each person's payment towards that surplus total is.
Okay. All right. I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Randy or Ms. Hart, have we ever tracked this before, of surplus in previous years?
We do not.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to move forward on this and have a public hearing and go from there. I think that's fine.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to advertise a public hearing for the ordinance to establish a method for refunding surplus personal property taxes on motor vehicles as it's presented here.
Second.
I'm sorry, I'm going to make a quick amendment to say ask for the November 1st meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I realize this isn't on the agenda, but would you entertain me offering one more tax-related item? So I just want to let you all know probably in my board report at the next meeting, I'm going to bring forward a suggestion. The Commonwealth allows us to exempt 100% disabled veterans from property taxes. And I I know many of our surrounding localities do that. This is an example of what Stafford County advertises on their website, and it's a way of thanking those who served us for their service. It's not all veterans by any means. It's just the ones who can prove with the letter from the VA that they are 100% disabled. So I've reached out to some folks who can get me in touch with the VA to determine how many citizens that might affect in our locality, so we could maybe get some kind of idea of the fiscal impact. But just kind of some of the people I know from the VFW are saying this might not even be 20 people affected by this. So
We have that.
I was going to say,
do you have it?
Oh, yes. We exempt real estate and we exempt one vehicle now that the vet.
For 100%.
They have to be 100% permanently and totally service connected disabled.
Not just disabled.
Not just disabled.
And elderly.
They fell down the steps in their basement. No, this is service connected.
Because I was told that there are some that don't.
Approximately how many? Ballpark. We have many, many, many. 90 some, perhaps. And maybe more. And then just what, this year, I believe last year, we started exempting one vehicle. We started that last year.
Would you mind sending us that data?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Ms. Hart, I've asked you this question before, and you gave me a figure around.
This is something President Obama put in place when he was in office. It's been many years. Yeah, vehicles were last year. Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to look something up for follow-up.
No.
Okay, I guess that's it, Mr. Miller. All right, do we have a motion?
I move to adjourn until October 18th in the boardroom.
Second.
All right, motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.